In this activity, the style was already set at the beginning, so you didn't need to add any of it, but I want to just go over it to show you some of the things that I set. Notice that I've got the standard main and nav and header sections and footer sections all styled, but let's scroll down till we get to the ones that are associated specifically with the form elements. So here's a field set, and remember we had 3 of them and they had lines. Notice what I did. I made the border a little bit wider and gave it the color that I wanted. And I put margins between them. These bump right up against each other. So the top and bottom margins, I made some space between them so they weren't right against each other. And then some padding on the inside. So I wanted a little bit of spacing on the top and the bottom and the left and right, so I did padding for that. The legend, I wanted it bolded and a little bit of space between, a little bit more space. You get 2 pixels of space on the line. I wanted a little bit more. And then labels. Now I did several with labels, so the things that were common in all the labels I put in just a label selector. And then some of the others were different. So the labels inside the field set had a specific width and they were aligned right. So I set those. The total label had a different width, so that was specific. The movie labels, and that's up here in this section for these movie details, that they had a different width. And then now here the heading span, these are these headings inside this field set. And to get them to line up just right, I used the width to do that. So I set the size of the font that I wanted for those headings and that I wanted them bold. And for 2 of them, 96 was just right. So those last 2. So I put that in the main one. And then I just set first and second to different widths to get those to line up. The choose class values are on this div, and this div. And I wanted those inset. So the way that I got that was just to simply put a padding left on those 3 divs. The spans I used inside here for these numbers. For the dollar values, I use those as a span, and to put a width on them, since span is inline, width doesn't work, so I had to change it to inline block so that I could put a specific width on that. Then I set the input elements, and here the text and the submit input element. So all of these text inputs and this submit input have all of these same settings, so you see a lot of similarity between them. If you scroll down here a little bit, you'll see that submit has some changes, right? It has that background color and the text color is different and they're bolded. So you see several changes there on the submit, but much was common between the 2. And then I set the focus. On the focus, I changed the outline, and I did that on all the inputs. So when you get focus on an input element, by default you get this little blue outline, and you might have noticed that, and that blue color didn't go with my style at all, so I changed it so that it would be the color that I wanted and big enough that it would be visible. Notice the other choice is to set it to none, and I did that down here on the selects and the dates, which are up here, right? The select and the dates. So what I did on these, notice that those aren't being highlighted. There's no outline on them. I set the outline to none on those. So to get rid of that blue, you can do either of those things. Either set it to none or redefine the outline by giving it new values. So the input quantity and cost, those are classes. So all of these input boxes have the class value quantity, and all of these input boxes have the class value cost, and so those I just set with width. Also notice that I wanted the quantity one centered, so you see that I didn't change that there, but the text align, I did text align right on the cost. Then finally you see that the select and the input type equal to date have similar settings, and they're up here right next to each other, right? That's a select and that's a select, and then this one is a date, and so they all have the same style there, and so that they look the same right there together. And that's what I did for style.